Hey everyone, welcome to Be a Better Human. I'm your host Ryan Schroyens. I'm here with Luke Westlake and with our friend Justin Darling. Welcome, Justin.
Thank
And
you.
we just wanted to start off as we do every podcast, letting everybody know our disclaimer, which is that this is not medical advice. We are not doctors, but these are things that have worked for us. These are things that we believe in. These are things that have worked for other people. So take from it what you will, and please feel free to share comments below, questions below. We love the questions. We love giving you guys feedback and answers to some of the things that you'd like to know. So make sure that you comment below, and we'll go through the questions and the comments as we go here. Um, Again, this is a podcast about being real and raw. So some of the things you're going to hear tonight, as in every podcast that me and Luke do, are going to be the truth. Well, everything is going to be the truth, but some of these things are going to be things that you haven't heard before. Um, and so, if you have any questions about any of that, please feel free to comment, and and Luke, myself, or Justin will make sure to address that for you. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Justin Darling, brain body alignment coach and consultant from London, Canada, and one of the most interesting people that Luke knows, and definitely one of the most interesting people that I've ever met. Me and Justin met not that long ago at one of the Chris Wiley sessions that me and Luke were doing at Charterhouse Studios here in London, and right away there was definitely an instant connection between me and Justin. We definitely, I anyway, realized that there's definitely a lot of synergies in some of the things that me and you both are into. So really excited to have you on, and looking forward to hearing everything that you have to share with us tonight. Um, I checked out your Facebook, and you have on there brain hacker, body weight training, holistic living coach, speaker, husband, and father. So lots of things that people, I'm sure, watching this can jive with. Me and Luke are both fathers and husbands, and into body weight training, Luke, and all kinds of things. So that's cool. Well, why don't we dive right into it, shall we? Let's talk about so the bullet points that we had shared with people in the PDF. Let's start with the first one, which is why don't you tell us a little bit about, and I know that you have some ways that you want to kind of break this out too, so feel free. Um, the importance of preventative healthcare and personal responsibility. Um, Let us know what where you want to take that.
In terms of like personal responsibility, just to define that specifically, I look at personal responsibility as your ability to respond or the ability to respond of your person. So I live with the kind of philosophical frame of reference that we are an animal, and that animal has a certain set of limitations and um, things that are strong about it and things that make it weak and things that make it vulnerable. And we need to learn to work with those. And the idea of personal responsibility is how well you can teach your human to respond and not react. So when we hear things that may freak us out or cause us to go into a state of fight or flight or stress uncontrollably, to what degree can we respond? And that really bridges into the models in which I present to people when I do brain body alignment coaching. And this is kind of the way that I structure it is a concept called stretching the nervous system. And I use stretching the nervous system because the nervous system I look at as kind of is the CEO of your life. It's in control. Your brain is basically a communication system that is telling the rest of your body what to do. And amidst all the COVID stuff, I think one of the biggest, most substantial things that we have to take away from this is our vulnerability as a society and as Canadian society and North American society in general, because we're not a very healthy bunch of people. We have immense rates of diabetes and immense rates of cardiovascular disease and cancer that are illustrating ourselves as a society and as the vast majority of our population continues to get older, the most substantial thing that we can do is implement some sort of preventative care system. And this doesn't have to be crazy huge rocket science when I talk about stretching the nervous system and implementing these types of things, but just some simple, like using vitamin C, and to what degree would that combat the manifestation of this illness hitting our society if the government started to invest in a very inexpensive, highly researched source of some sort of preventative care for the population.
Yeah,
Um,
you're the second person in a row in the podcast to say vitamin C, and it's interesting because I know that there's been some talk of certain places in the US right now banning high dose vitamin C, so it's
wow,
just frustrating, but anyway.
yeah, and it's like those things are insane to think about, like that we're neglecting nutritional science. Like how are we not? How are we just completely negating all forms of science? And like when I look at the medical system and the medical model, and I don't like, it's far too easy for me to bash the medical system, and it's definitely there and it's definitely good, and I appreciate the people that are in it. I think a significant mistake that we make is that we call it a healthcare system, especially in Canada, especially because it's publicly funded. Because everybody in the healthcare system knows that they're taking care of sick people. They're caring for the people who are sick. Like that's the purpose of the healthcare system, is to take care of the people that are sick and not actually promote health. So I wouldn't really say that we have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system, and everybody in the system knows it. And it's just starting to be called a healthcare system again because politicians are calling these people healthcare workers. And I don't discount, like my wife's a healthcare worker. I totally respect the people who are in there dealing with the situation. It's also interesting to hear my wife's firsthand perspective of what she sees with everything that's going on in the hospital, because there's a lot of limitations of lockdown. There's not a huge amount of people at LHSC who are in critical care with COVID. And
I've heard the
but
same
generally,
thing. It's interesting.
yeah, the like there's five people I think at LHSC, which is two hospitals that are in critical care with COVID. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're on respirators. That just means they're in critical care. Um, so, I don't. Can this thing get worse? Can it overwhelm the hospital? Can that have backlash implications? Of course, and that's the main thing that I think we need to think about with this. But generally, the healthcare or medical model for how we care for our citizens as a society is to use insulin as an example, because there's a lot of people that have diabetes and or are pre-diabetic. About half our population is pre-diabetic, so they're insulin resistant. They don't process insulin well. They can't manage spikes in their blood sugar. They have this constant unleash of insulin because their body only knows to handle a huge spike of sugar, because that's what they fed themselves for years. And what the healthcare system does is you go to your doctor, and your doctor makes you drink this orange drink, and then they measure your insulin, and then they judge, and they have a certain metric of how bad your insulin response is, basically. And then they say, okay, well, you're fine right now. This is something we'll have to keep an eye on. When you come back in next year, we'll check it again. So you come back next year, you drink more orange drink, they check it again. It's gotten a little bit worse. And they're like, okay, well, this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And then you come back, and year after year, oh, you're now pre-diabetic. Year after year, oh, you now have type 2 diabetes. And the entire frame of reference, the entire focus of the medical system is on a model that we're going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then they have interventions once it gets so bad. And the whole frame is not framed around how we can do the opposite, how we can take an insulin response, or how we can take someone that's pre-diabetic or even type 2 diabetes and doesn't manage insulin well, and can we create models of working with people and working with, as an example, the insulin response to improve it, so that people aren't struggling with type 2 diabetes, aren't struggling with insulin resistance. And again, this is just one illustration of one system in the body, but I think the entire frame of reference is wrong. We're observing the deterioration of our own physiology in our life. And I think one of the most substantial things And one of the significant stories that we have to change about who we are and our place in the world is that we're going to get stronger. We're going to improve ourselves. We're going to continue to improve our health. And if we look at it from a systemic standpoint, or rather the various different systems that exist in the body. So, like I said, I talk about stretching the nervous system. The brain is the CEO of your life. The brain is telling your insulin response what to do, as an example of insulin. So if your brain is freaking out inside, so people at home who are freaking out about COVID for the various reasons in which you could be freaking out about COVID, that's causing an elevation of stress hormone. When your body is in a state of fight or flight, what that does is it tells your body to send glucose to your muscles, because in a state of fight or flight, you need to fight a lion, and you need glucose to either fight that lion or run away from the lion, which is what we would all actually do. But we need to run away from that lion, and we need glucose to be able to do it. We need glucose to be able to go to war. And when our brain is telling our bodies to release glucose, yet we're stuck in our houses and we can't move and we can't express ourselves and we can't express that energy, what happens is the body needs more glucose, and the body craves sugar, and the body wants to eat like super high glycemic stuff that's just going to not be good for you. Like, these are all the foods we should not be eating. Hopefully it's fruit, but what it ends up being is all of your processed garbage, which is going to spike people's blood sugar. And that's just one example of what's happening. And the concept of stretching the nervous system is the opposite to the medical model. It's figuring a way in which we can work with the various different systems in our body to improve them and improve their function. And I believe that um, what we can do is we can potentially develop an ability to control our own physiology. And if we have the ability to develop and control our own physiology to an infinite scale, or we have a will over our body as this thing that is observing a body, what can we influence? Can we influence what our cells are doing? Can we influence and tell our cells to not uptake a coronavirus that is developed and grown within our cells? Like, this is how viruses work. They are a detoxification of cellular toxicity. So if this is a virus we're dealing with, to what degree can we influence it?
Yeah,
And I'm
really.
not saying that we can, but that's a significant question, and that we need to answer. So
Yeah,
stretching the nervous system.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, from my perspective, of course, I spoke about it in the first episode. I think I talked to you about it in the studio. I mean, me and Luke both have been down a journey with sugar and the types of things that you're talking about, right? And it's changed my life forever. People ask me all the time. They go, you know, when are you going to start eating, you know, the stuff you used to eat again? I can't even think of what it is now. That's how long it's been. It's been over, so it's like over 2 years, and but some of the stuff, like I used to be a chip fiend. I used to eat chips constantly, pop and all kinds of stuff. It was so bad. Like I said it in the first episode, I used to drink at one point almost a whole case of pop a day. Like I would say, a couple of cases of pop between 2 days, but it was bad. And and I didn't know. I had no idea, right? You believe the marketing, you believe all this stuff, you believe um because you don't know what to believe. There's just so much out there, especially right now where, there's so much content right now with everyone being home being pumped out there. So you don't really know what to believe. And but I believe, and I think I was mentioning this to you earlier, Justin, is that the truth is out there. You just have to know where to look, and you have to go with your gut, right? Everyone makes bad decisions all the time, and then they're like, "Oh, I knew I should have said that. I knew I should have did that." Go with your gut, right? When your gut tells you something, your gut that's actually, there's significance to that, and people make those bad decisions all the time. So, start listening to your gut more. And I did. I mean, I almost lost my life, and I was being chased down by a thief that stole some stuff from my parents' store, from our store, and I almost died. And that's, and then, I fasted for 3 days, even though I didn't know what fasting was, lost 14 pounds. And then my brother, who was doing ketosis at the time, said, "Hey man, you need to try intermittent fasting and ketosis." And I had no idea what that even meant. And look at me now, I'm 80 plus pounds lighter for over 2 years. and I feel like $1,000,000. And it's crazy to me because you know, I've learned a lot even since then about body toxicity, toxins in the foods, toxins in everything. But more than that, you know, what can we do to affect our not only our cells, but everything, right? I'm on vitamin C right now, vitamin D, selenium, chaga mushrooms, all kinds of really cool stuff that some of which I've never been on in my whole life. And I feel, I know this is crazy to say, but I feel great. Like I feel almost the best I ever have at a time when I shouldn't necessarily feel that way. But I've done a lot of research. Like I was saying to you earlier before we started the podcast, I've done like a month worth of research on what this thing is and how to try to do my due diligence to get ahead of it. And I think that's what you're preaching is, there's no silver spoon that somebody's going to hand you that's going to make this thing go away. I think that every person is different. I mean, let's face it, you know, everything in our lives is lifestyle related. So not any one person is the same. I live by that motto. Everything is lifestyle related. So everything's going to be slightly different for everyone. And you have to figure out what's right for you. And and that just takes, knuckling down, putting in the time and becoming an expert at your body, right? Becoming an expert at, do you need more vitamin C? Are you lacking selenium? Are you lacking potassium? Are or do you have too much of it? I'd gotten some zinc for my grandmother. I'm getting all my grandma's groceries and all of her supplements right now, as well as my mom, because they can't go out. And uh, I got her some zinc, and I was talking. We had Chandler from Healthy Planet on the second episode, and Chandler was the one that had actually recommended to me to get the zinc with copper. And he said, some people need some women specifically need the copper, because it's something that they need. And I said, okay, I'll get that one. And it turns out it didn't agree with her, you know. So I'm gonna have to, go this week and get her a different zinc. So, like I say, not every, just because one type of zinc doesn't work, oh, it's a placebo. No, no, it doesn't work like that. Some people love doing certain workouts, right? And other people, I mean, you're a major workout stretching guy. You can comment on this, but it's like not every workout is right for everyone. I know a lot of people who live and die by certain things, heavy weightlifting or um, different things, and it's not right for everybody. So I agree with everything you're saying, and I think people should definitely uh, do their research and figure out what's right for them, and consult people like yourself and Chandler, people who've gone through some of the journey, right? And know what some of the answers already, and then trial and error. Um,
And it's like from an exercise standpoint, like I'm always as I've aged and as I've learned more and as I've researched more, I've learned the importance of a principle based approach. And you talk about I apologize, I don't know the way you reference it, but like your primal self, or um like what do you call it?
Sorry,
Primal primal
Tribal knowledge?
oh, the
tribal
tribal
knowledge.
knowledge.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
Tribal knowledge,
Oh,
yes.
sorry, tribal. Oh, yeah, I was
Tribal
like primal.
knowledge.
Yeah, tribal
There's one.
knowledge. Yeah.
Tribal knowledge. So like there's principles in which we can distill through these things. And even in terms of exercise, like honestly, the best thing for the vast majority of people to do is walk. Just go for a walk. Go outside, get fresh air. You don't need to run. You don't need to walk fast. You don't need to do cardiovascular stretching exercise. Like if you know nothing, just go for a walk. And when you walk, stand upright, breathe fully, breathe with the well, we're hunched
My
over,
wife's gonna
continuous
love you right now.
well, these are all things that osteopathy is taught.
Yeah.
But like and swing your arms. The cross lateral movement of your right arm moving forward when your left leg moves, and your left arm when your right leg moves, like that is creating connection in the left right hemisphere of the brain And that cross lateral development is so fundamental for development. And like once you're like, okay, I have a good walking habit, then start to look at other things, then start to look at different forms of exercise. Because if you're going to go jump into many things without an expert or someone guiding you, there's risks that you can hurt yourself and you're not necessarily going to do it right. The most substantial thing that people can do is walk for their own health, and get outside and being outside and being in the fresh air, and breathing sunlight, or getting natural vitamin D from the sun. But the stretching the nervous system. So the nervous system is the CEO of your life. We have an ability to stimulate our nervous system. And when we stimulate our nervous system, it's called upregulation of the nerves. So you're stimulating nerves within your body. I believe that we have an infinite degree in which we can stimulate or upregulate our nervous system. This is illustrated through concepts of hysterical strength. Hysterical strength is not something that's been researched, but it's basically a concept of the mother that lifts a car off the child. There's a man, can't think of his name right now, I apologize, but he lifted a man off of a child. It's been documented, or lifted a car off of a child, off of a teenager. He broke his teeth when he did, because he was clenching his jaw
Wow.
so intensely as he lifted this car. But we can't ethically create situations where someone would have to exert themselves with such force, so
Of
we
course.
can't study it. But there is this thing called hysterical strength. My grandfather, at the end of his life, who had Alzheimer's, ripped a door off the hospital, the mechanical doors that you need to like press the button or twist the key where it's like and it opens. He
Wow.
pulled it off of its hinges. And to think about the mechanical force that would require for him to put through his body, and the balance and the stability to be able to pull that off, is astonishing. And I believe we all have that force within us. I believe we have a certain limit to what we can stimulate or upregulate our nervous systems to. And what we can do is we can improve that limit. And how we do that is, if you're sitting at this center and you're not doing anything, you're not stimulating your body at all, this force that is observing an animal, is not engaging in telling the animal to stimulate it all, go for a walk. You learn a certain level of threshold in which you can tell your animal to stimulate or upregulate. The other side of this is down regulation, or calming down, or
Right.
relaxing the nervous system, or down regulating nerves. Now, again, if somebody is super unfamiliar with this, if you're constantly eating shit food, your nervous system cannot relax. Your nervous system is constantly trying to figure out where my next meal is. And it's not necessarily from a caloric standpoint, but it's from a zinc standpoint. It's from a copper standpoint. And we're so in touch with what our bodies needs biochemically and from a micronutrient standpoint. We're still trying to figure out macronutrients. We're still trying to figure out fat, protein, carbohydrates. I believe that as we develop this range of our nervous system, we have the ability to understand more of what's going on in ourselves, because we are getting a broader observation of what our brains can see within our nervous system. And we are ultimately expanding what we are consciously capable of. So once you start to walk, and this was my story with stretching the nervous system, I started exercising. I was 18. I wanted to put on some muscle. I wanted to gain some weight. I wanted to get bigger. And I was like, okay, great. I got that. I started to gain some results, but I hit a plateau. And it wasn't until I started fueling myself better and fueling myself with more nutrients, more micronutrients, more just protein and just calories, that oh my gosh, I started to get stronger, and I started to be able to exert myself with more force. And then as I started to even get healthier and start drinking cleaner water and these types of things, oh my God, I got even stronger. I hit a plateau, started doing meditation, started doing relaxation. Oh my God, I got even stronger. Started doing deeper sense of breathing practices. I started getting even stronger. So I look at this as a dual-sided process of expanding the range in which we can express ourselves within our nervous system. And when we look at the nervous system, and even when we look at Ryan, to what extent can you influence Ryan? And like I said, I think that we have the ability to develop that range of influence, or that range in which we can consciously see what's going on within our physiology. And through that development of that range, we have the ability to influence our physiology. And then what are the implications of our ability to beat this virus? Because certain people are beating it. If a certain amount of people are asymptomatic this thing, are they asymptomatic because they have healthy cells and their body can process it better, or why is this? and what is the degree in which are they thinking more positively, XYZ, and that range I think is the most substantial thing, and what I would love to even do professionally and with as I grow, as I get older, is find some way to measure that range, and is it a conceptual thing, and can that model be taken and put into your um, so your insulin receptors, as an example. With insulin, you have to learn how to process insulin again. And when people are insulin sensitive, so people who are pre-diabetic or insulin resistant, sorry, who are pre-diabetic, who don't process or don't use insulin all that well, when you go into a state of ketosis or you eat high fat, your body basically goes, on the first few days, it releases insulin because it thinks that you need to process glucose because your body's so used to processing glucose. You taught it this pattern to process glucose. And then after 4 or 5 days of being in ketosis, your body's like, I don't need insulin anymore. I can just manage this with my ketones. And then you introduce a higher carbohydrate meal or a higher carbohydrate day to spike people's insulin. And then their insulin receptors go, whoa, I need to start producing insulin again. And then you do 4 or 5 days of higher fat, and people's insulin then responds. So what you're doing with this, when you're stretching the range of your pancreas's ability to produce insulin, is you are saying, boom, spike insulin, down, calm the pancreas down, boom, spike insulin, calm the pancreas down. And the more effectively you do that, the more effectively you can develop a range over your own pancreas. We can take this out and put it into the cardiovascular system. You have to learn how to stimulate your heart. This is a very important part of health. This is a very important part of just heart health in general, but you have to learn how to stimulate your heart. You have to learn how to put muscle tension. You have to make it contract fast. The thing that people miss with their heart is you also have to learn how to calm it down. You have to learn how to listen to it. You have to learn how to relax it. And these models, I believe, can be taken out and plugged into any of the various different systems in the body. Same thing with our immune system, is we have the ability right now to downregulate our immune system, to fuel ourselves with things like chaga, to fuel ourselves with things like vitamin C. So our immune system does not feel like it has to fight off everything that comes into our body, so that if we are impacted by something like a coronavirus, our immune system then can go, I'm strong, I have this range, I can stimulate, because I know I'm going to be able to calm myself back down again. And I think these are the illustrations that we need to look at with these types of things, especially in terms of numbers that are being projected in our country like Canada. Is like, we might be in this situation for 18 months. Hopefully not necessarily on lockdown for 18 months, but like, we might be dealing with this coronavirus for 18 months. It might come back next year. So why is the government not telling people to exercise? Why is the government not telling people to do things like use vitamin C, which has been researched and illustrated to benefit your immune system? Like, these things are absolutely wild, in terms of an approach to managing this thing.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah, 100%. What's your you talk about fueling yourself from chaga mushrooms. I've become in love with chaga mushrooms in the last little while. It's made me feel incredible. Um, where do you where in your life, give people are sort of, in every episode that we do, I like people to have little takeaways. One of them so far with you is definitely the walking and the moving your arms, right? Let's give people a takeaway here. Like, in terms of things like supplementation, what's your recommendation in terms of where should people start? And what's a couple of things that people should look at in terms of like, because we're talking about preventative healthcare and stretching the nervous system, and so, kind of, because I want to shift into, as we have a really important topic to get to here. I want to shift into that, but as kind of a takeaway, simple takeaway, what are a couple of the basic things that people should be starting to research and look at, um, as a start?
I think from a supplementation standpoint, it like, to be honest, it's a luxury. Not many people can afford it. When you talk about going out to buy zinc and then getting one with copper in it, knowing the one with copper in it's not good for your grandma, and then having to get another one, that is a luxury. In terms of, like, generally, the most substantial thing that I think people need to look at is just inflammation. Um, and I think inflammation is from toxins that we build up within our cellular system. and you need to look at it from a standpoint of what's going on within the cells. So managing inflammation and researching inflammation would be the most beneficial thing. Beyond that, from a supplementation standpoint, most likely fish oils. That's like, if you're going to think about one thing to go out and buy, a high quality fish oil, the outside of your cells are made of fat, and that layer of fat is very important for your body's ability to put nutrients into the cell and get nutrients out of the cell. And most inflammation is caused by too much omega-6 in the body and not enough omega-3 in the body. So when we we eat omega-3 fatty acids, we start to change that ratio, and we need to get that ratio back to a little bit healthier of the balance. Most people are sitting at like 60 to 1. A healthy ratio is like 1 to 3.
Wow.
1 to 3, 1 to 6 of omega-3 to omega-6. So
What is
most
what's
people,
that cost from?
basically too much omega-6. So like when we eat too much, when we eat fast food, so I ate fast food growing up. I drank a lot of pop growing up. I think about you drinking pop, and I was like, I used to just drink Kool-Aid. Like
Oh,
that
wow.
was my world. So like, but now I just drink water and feel amazing and feel better than I ever felt in my life. But no, it's when you go out and eat fast food as a kid, your cells hold on to that balance of fat. So if you grew up on, like, McDonald's was like a weekly thing for us, right? Like when we went out and ate French fries, that's cooked in omega-6 fat. Those fatty acids stay in your body. That's what makes your cells up. And until we start to introduce more omega-3s and we reduce the omega-6s in our diet, we're going to sit at a very 60 to 1 ratio, which is going to cause a lot of inflammation in the body. So omega-3s would be my most substantial recommendation with supplementation from a general population standpoint.
Luke, are you doing fish oils right now?
Yeah, I generally always do the fish oil. Um, and I think it's a lot of what you avoid that's going to really help you out here.
Yeah. And like, my recommendation truly for people is like, have a 10-year journey. 2 years for you, Ryan, is very quick.
Yeah, I
I would
realize
say.
that. Yeah, I know.
Like, most people can't handle that. The best thing, like, if you put yourself on a 10-year path and be like, in 10 years, I'm going to be so substantially more healthy than I am now. People don't like that because they want the the six pack in 6 weeks. Um, that's my new
That's what the
marketing plan.
magazine said.
um like, that requires a certain level of genetics, like a certain level of, just, you won the lottery if you can manage your hormones in that period of time, because it's a bigger picture of learning about yourself, learning about how your various different systems work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next area here. So, we're not going to talk about a decentralized approach to handling current issues and situations. Um, why don't you elaborate on what exactly we're talking about?
Sure. So I think when we talk about these types of conversations, people don't even know what decentralized is. So just to define that, um, we have centralized entities. The Canadian government is a centralized entity that rules over all the various different parts of Canada. It becomes a little bit more decentralized when you get into it from a provincial standpoint, where the federal government has a certain influence over the provincial government, and so on and so forth, down into the municipality level as well. So we live in a decentralized world in that sense, although the mechanisms of who is in charge of this is ultimately an illustration of the centralized system at the top. Something that I think is really substantial in this topic is, so I'm in the fitness industry. I the week before March break, whenever that was, when they decided to close school. So I'm also at university, so they closed down the university. I had my lecture Thursday night, and they were like, boom, no school Friday morning, like no school, done. The universities are closed for this semester, which was substantial. And what was interesting about this is I was like, I had shifts booked the next week to do training and to work with people. And like the Sunday, I'm messaging people in the industry that I know, and I'm like, are you concerned about this at all? Have you heard anything about this? And there was nothing. There was no noise. No one had expressed concern. There was like one parent of a place. I work at an obstacle course gym in London, that they had their March break camp because everyone's doing March break. Even the YMCA was like, we're doing March break camp. Don't worry about it. We're still going to do it. Monday morning, they were like, poof, nope, no March break camp. YMCA closed. The obstacle course gym still did camp on Monday, but one person before Monday was like, this isn't good. You need to be careful. You should stop. You shouldn't do your thing. And then by Tuesday, they had 30 people signed up for March break camp, 30 kids in there on Monday. By Tuesday, there was 5. So they went from 30 to 5 overnight. And the substantial part with that is that, and even from the fitness industry standpoint, like communities, people were socially attacking these organizations. They were like, you cannot stay open. It's almost as if like this social organism was organizing and attacking itself. And the thing that I find so interesting from a decentralized standpoint is like, that's the perfect image of decentralization. That's the perfect image of the individuals within society taking responsibility for what the society is doing and encouraging the society to take steps in a certain direction to protect the population. And
Right.
the thing that I find so fascinating about the current situation is like, I look at someone like in Trudeau's situation, where he's basically like, all right, you need to stay home. Even Ford's situation, like, all right, you need to stay home. However many people are in Ontario, say it's 10 million. I don't know the actual numbers, but in Canada, there's 36 million people or something. Trudeau now has this sense of like, wow, I told 36 million people what to do, and 97% of them listened to me. Like, and there's, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like, there's a certain substantial limit to when you tell 36 million people what to do and they listen to you. And it's almost as if like I think about myself in that situation, and it's like I would be worried about me becoming corrupt, me becoming a authoritarian government, like generally very concerned, not because um he's I think he's doing a good regards as a leader of a huge organization in the sense of his actions that he's doing. But I think the decentralized model is, what if people are more well informed? What if we have a better image of that's dispersed across our culture, where people can think for themselves and make decisions? And I don't look at the dynamics of social isolation or the dynamics of social distance that happened in the fitness industry because Trudeau told us all to go home. It's no, the smaller micro aspects of the way in which we function in a decentralized way were the reasons why gyms were closing.
Yeah, you're
Not
right.
because
No, you're right.
not because Trudeau was saying it, not because the Ford government was saying it. It's because individuals, excuse me, individuals were saying, we need to manage this thing. This is important. Let's take care of our society. And
Absolutely.
that is such a substantial thing that we have to look at Trudeau and be like, dude, we didn't all stay home because you're telling us to stay home. We are choosing to stay home for the sovereignty of our society and for the well-being of our society. And that's a very different narrative than I think is playing out, which is very concerning. And I think the model of decentralization is, like, my image of it is, can we utilize technology more effectively, where it's like we can know we're going to get sick before we're even sick? Can we have enough biofeedback, and can we are we at a point technologically where we can manage and look at our cardiovascular health? And then can we manage that system within the micro communities in which we exist? So within our families, I have young kids, so I'm constantly outside and playing with them outside and interacting with our neighbors. Do I let my kids go anywhere close to my neighbor who's in her 80s and has MS? Fuck no. Like, don't go near that person. Don't
Yeah.
go near my neighbor who is immunocompromised. Like, don't interact with those people, right?
Right.
But there's a certain dynamic that, like, my one neighbor who's in her 60s and she's super laid back and she's a nurse, so she understands the importance of washing your hands and this type of thing. She'll help my kid with help my 2-year-old with his scooter when he falls down. Like she'll go pick the scooter up and like give him to him. I'm like, careful, like you're within 6 feet of my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's like, but like, and we're now, and people are getting tickets for this now, like, which is
I know.
insane. Like
I know.
we
I
need some sort of government force to tell us how to manage our own well-being is the most destructive, dangerous thing. I'm actually more concerned about authoritarian dictatorships, governments, than I am of a coronavirus. I think the fact that we're not looking at organizations, we're not looking at these people at the top and being like, they just like, even in a Trump standpoint, like he just told 360 million people to stay home. You don't think he gets a quasi hard on from that? Like he loves that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's innate. It's like like this is, and a decentralized model allows us to give power back to the people and allows us to manage our communities more effectively. The key thing that I think is really important in this topic is privacy, because when we start to do things
Amen.
like give our health information, like when we start, and especially in the realm of what's happening with coronavirus and what the narrative could end up being from this, is like we already basically don't have enough external privacy. Like the world around us can look into our lives at any point. I have 2 devices in my house that are connected to the internet 24/7, my wife's cell phone, my cell phone, that have audio, video, access to my life. Like if somebody really wanted to hack into my world and watch everything that I do and listen to everything that I do in every conversation that I have, it's totally possible to do. Could an algorithm do that? Yes. Could that be run by an authoritarian dictatorship government? Yes. Are we at a standpoint with privacy where it's like, oh, privacy doesn't really matter that much until it does matter,
Well,
and then
yeah.
we don't have any of
It's
it.
like the PPE right now, right? You know, oh, we don't need to order 50,000 masks right now. That would be insane. Why would we have 50,000 masks or 100,000 masks? I happen to get a copy of an order sheet for the Toronto hospitals, and it was like, you need 100,000 of this and 50,000 of that. It's like, wow, those are staggering numbers, and they make sense in the weight of a pandemic. But why don't you have like why do you only have a 5-day supply left at this point? Like what's going on here? Like, and that's all part of it, right? It's part of just like you said, understanding your community, understanding what's going on, and not only understanding it, but not just standing around and looking for someone else to solve the problem. Being your own, being your own Trojan horse, and coming up with solutions that make sense. And I think that's going to be a big takeaway from this whole thing, is going to be and people are already commenting on it like crazy, right? Because of this whole 3M chaos, especially here in London, because 3M has a plant here making tape and all kinds of stuff. So, um, it's really why, like my grandmother worked at 3M for like 20, whatever it was, 25 years. And, I went over to her house the other day and she was wearing a 3M mask. Um, it's like I only think she has a couple of them there, but I mean, it's these things drive people crazy. Like,
Mhm.
and people go, wow, how can this be? I think it's all exactly what you're saying, and I think it's all part and parcel what everyone's witnessing right now is that what we're seeing is a lot of the developed shortcomings of our own society. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. So in that way, it's a good thing. It's a good thing in a sense that we now as a community, as a country, as a global race of humans, we're going, wow, all in our own way, once again, because everything's different in every country, it's different in every neighborhood, every town. But we're noticing like, wow, we need to do a better job. We need to do more domestic manufacturing. We need to do, we need to identify holes and start, filling the holes. And anyway, that's really cool. And so I want to just sort of segue into something that I know you wanted to talk about. Something called the attention revolution. And,
Mhm.
at a time when, we're obviously firing up this podcast and we have, a tremendous amount of people. I actually put out a thing today to people to say, hey, because a lot of people in the music industry right now out of work, and a lot of them are at home doing streaming and videos and stuff. And I really want to share that. I really want to share that across the country, because I think there's people in London, who could be, sending their stuff out to people in Calgary and vice versa. So I'm working with my team right now to develop a platform for Music City that we can put that out there to the world for people. So, but you want to talk about the attention revolution, and so what's the significance of the attention revolution right now, more so than ever before? Can you kind of give us a synopsis here?
So attention revolution, just from a synopsis standpoint, is attention is the most valuable asset on the planet. Everything comes down to attention. Every single business that we exist within is like, we need attention for it to function. For the podcast, you need attention for the podcast to function. If you don't have the attention of people, now the wonderful thing with the internet is we can post it and people can access it later. But attention is the world's most valuable asset. If Microsoft did not have attention, they would not be able to sell a computer to somebody. And attention revolutions are a thing that I believe has happened over the course of our human history. When we, like, the things in which we pay attention to have shaped our society, have shaped the way in which we live. So in the 1600s, we had newspapers and the printing press. And so much of our society shifted and paid attention to the newspapers. And that deemed the powerhouse of our society and of our economic system, and directed the direction of the Industrial Revolution. And it was so substantial and so powerful. And the people who own the newspapers had virtually complete control over the economy, in terms of what happened coming back from the war, and what happened with the markets, where word got out that the Americans lost the war in the newspapers and the media, and the stock market tanked, and the next day it came out that, oh, the Americans won the war. And in that time, people were able to buy up a substantial amount of market and then have a substantial growth overnight in their stock or wealth portfolio that they had. And this developed a substantial economic force. What came after newspapers, and the interesting thing with attention revolutions is it took us 300 years to go from newspaper to radio. We were just using words for like thousands of years, right? And written word on paper for thousands of years before the printing press. And even prior to written word, it was like language and sound. This is what we paid attention to because we are this social organism. We would make little sounds, and that meant there's a snake outside your hut. Don't go outside. It's going to eat you. And we had different sounds for things because we lived in these communities and they meant things, right? And words mean things. So the attention revolution has changed. We got to radio in like 1912, and that created the foundation for the American household. We positioned our couches around a box in the corner of our room in which we gave our attention to, and we put our kids in front of and were influenced by this box. We now hold the box in our hand. But the fascinating thing was that 300 years to go from newspaper to radio, 50, 60 years to go from radio to TV, 40 years-ish to go from the 35 years probably to go from TV in the 1960s, 1950s to internet and computers, and then probably 20 years to go from computers to internet, and then probably 15 years to go from internet to social media, which was MySpace and the way in which we acted with popular culture, and then probably 10 years to go from social media onto mobile devices, and then 5 years to go from mobile devices back onto social media. And I think we're now living in the realm of virtual reality, where we can, in terms of video game culture, I think that's an illustration of VR, because people get to embody themselves as a different archetype or a different reality in a conceptualization. And I think the next attention revolution, I think it's coming so fast because the pace in which we shift our attention is becoming shorter and shorter. And the coronavirus is a thing. I think it's a precipice of us shifting our attention from the world outside of us to the world inside of us and developing. And I think this is going to shift and create a whole new change in human consciousness and what it means to be human and what we focus on, because we need to focus on the systems intrinsically. We need to focus on our nervous system, because our nervous system is the CEO of our life. It's the thing in which tells us how to do everything that we do, from personally, professionally, to our parenting, to our children. The way we interact with everything else in our environment comes through our nervous system. and that is the system that holds all the patterns and the ways in which we exist. And the most substantial economic shift, I believe, and economically, like, the money is going to shift in this direction. And I think what we're going to see is a decentralized world, ideally with a decentralized, privacy, rich currency in which we can exist financially, um, where the foundation of that whole entire economic system is of self exploration and the improvement of self.
That's amazing. I mean, that's we were talking earlier before the podcast about what Be a Better Human is all about, and that was one of the in the infancy stages of me coming up with this brand with Luke. I was saying to Luke that Be a Better Human is all about learning how to be a better human. And because my theory is that people don't know enough about being human, don't know enough about their bodies, don't know enough about their consciousness themselves, and they know a lot more about devices and computers and technology, in some cases, than their own heart and how their heart works. Meanwhile, they're racing around locking themselves up in the US right now, but there's, you know the number one killer in America is heart disease, right? And
Around
yet,
the world.
or yeah, and yet people are not doing, nearly enough research on their heart. It's the fundamentals. If your heart stops, it's game over. It doesn't matter how many cars you have or how many homes you own or how big your company is. I mean, my wife's family, they had a really successful filter business, and the grandfather sold the company because he was told he had 6 months to live. Sold the company, whole family worked there, or all their lives evolved around it, and they were all kicked out, wiped off the map in no time. And this whole, I mean, he survived the Holocaust. He went through literally hell to get to where he's got an incredible story, and it all went away the minute he sold the company, and that was it, and it was poof, gone. And he ended up going on to live many, many more years. And um, and I think it's because he wanted to live. I think people that decide, you know what, this I'm gonna die. I'm gonna get this thing. Well, you know what? If you keep saying that enough, you're gonna manifest it. Um,
Yeah.
and he didn't. He was a proud man, and he invented the fuel filter. He invented that little filter that goes in the hose on the gas pumps for a company. And so, uh, he really wanted to live. He was, in his final years, he was a proud man, and he had a big family, and they were really proud of him. And so, I think that's all part of it. We're doing this, like you said, for society, and we're trying to save. Certainly in the beginning, it was said that it's hitting the older people, and now they're saying, well, it's hitting younger people. And I don't, you know, it's I agree that if you can avoid someone from losing their life, I fully agree that we should try and do something about that 100%. And I think that starts with looking from within, like you said. I couldn't agree with you more. That I think this is exactly why people are tuning in right now. This is exactly why people should continue to tune in to not only us, but all of the other types of programs and places, and go see people like Chandler and yourself to learn as much as you can about how to be better at being human. And that's just, yeah, man, amen. I think it's the fundamentals of why we're here.
Yeah.
Um,
And I believe that our entire economic system is going to make a shift towards supporting that and facilitating that process. I think it's inevitable. I don't think it's stoppable
yeah. Well,
because,
I'm counting on it. I'm hoping so.
yeah, because the degree and the pace in which we are shifting our attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So, and yeah,
yeah, so political correctness. Moving on to the next topic here: political correctness, limiting nuanced dialogue, and critical topics.
mhm.
Um, what are we looking at there?
So I think, a wonderful example is so I'm not a huge fan that we uh, close down our economy. I think it was, a rash decision, um, in, compared to a brave decision of, the way in which it actually played out. socially of the micro communities interacting with itself and encouraging certain organizations to like take a break, don't do this, don't open your doors, that type of thing, like close down, don't do that. Um, versus the level of kind of dictatorship that we're seeing manifest itself of a top down approach of saying everything needs to close, we need to stop doing what we're doing. I think we could have managed this thing so much more effectively from a decentralized standpoint, especially economically. And
Mhm.
I think truly the political correctness that's coming through, and this is just off my own individual observation, I think it's a manifestation that like there's plenty of things wrong with capitalism. Don't get me wrong, but I think what's happening is people are basically banking on capitalism's going to fall apart. This is great. The economy is going to go to shit. Capitalism's going to fail, and then something else is going to come in. We're going to live in a socialized system of whatever, or you know what is going to replace it if the capitalist system fails. And this is very concerning when you're looking at what's happening in the states when they're completely closed down. How long are we going to be closed down? To what degree? Like you have your kind of tinfoil hat wearing people in the states who are like, you know, it's martial law, it's a bioengineered weapon, like these types of things, and those are like re- viable arguments, but there's so much that's going on. So when I talk about, okay, so to what degree can we influence our physiology? I can obviously move my finger. An interesting story when I do some hand balancing, when you talk about mobility and exercise, because I like standing on my hands. It's a wonderful activity. I encourage it with anybody who thinks they're able. But I was doing hand balancing when I first started hand balancing. I'm very self-taught. I appreciate the process of this. I would stand on my hands and blood would rush to my head. I'd have to come down out of a handstand. I stand on my hands, blood would rush to my head. One day I was standing there practicing my handstands, and I was like, all right, I'm going to tell my body to send blood away from my head and towards my feet. So I went on my hands, I stood upside down, blood started to rush to my head. And all I did was I had this thought of like, okay, blood away from my head and towards my feet. And instantaneously, not only did the blood stop rushing to my head, but I actually had relief from the pressure of the blood that was rushing to my head. So,
Wow.
what degree can we influence our physiology? And when we understand the process and the mechanisms of a virus is produced with inside of our cells. So, if we have the ability to influence ourselves, do we have the ability to combat and beat or integrate with this virus in the way in which it touches us? And are we missing the message that is going along in terms of physiology, that we have the ability to influence it? We have the ability to control our autonomous functions of our body. Wim Hof is a man that is driving this science forward, and he is illustrating strongly within the scientific community that we have the ability to influence our immune system, we have the ability to influence our autonomic nervous system, and tap into very deep parts of our physiology. And to what degree can we tell ourselves to not, or at least manage this virus a little bit more effectively than the ways in which we are? And the degree of fear that gets perpetuated through this, um, that puts us into a state of fight or flight, and is putting more negative thoughts into our head. It's just going to cause more toxicity in our body. And the political
Absolutely.
correctness comes from, if I even try to defend the economy and say we need to, like, I want to get back to work. Like, I realize that many people who work at Home Depot and Superstore don't like their job and they don't want to work, and they post these like memes of like, I'm an essential worker. Um, you know, you need to respect my position and make sure you're respecting the store. And I think that I truly think that we're telling ourselves a really shitty story about our strengths. If we look at the numbers of this of COVID, I like day one, like when they first announced the school closures on the Thursday night, when the universities closed, I was like, this is completely blown out of proportion. I look at like a mortality rate from this, and I think it's going to turn out to be like similar to the flu. And if we're looking at a
Yeah.
mortality rate that is similar to the flu, like if we look at, you know, there's problems with the testing. I don't love the testing for many reasons. I think that the way in which what we're actually testing is not giving a proper illustration of what's actually going on in our society. Canadian government is releasing multiple different numbers. Their epidemiological summary says it's somewhere around 6,000 cases as of yesterday. Their main site says it's like 12,500. So we're looking at it over a 2 times discrepancy in what our government is producing from a statistical standpoint. And I can't even have this conversation with people. I post these things and I get attacked when I try to defend an economy. And what I'm really defending is the fact that like our economy is producing masks for our healthcare workers right now so they don't get sick. Like that's what our economy is. It's the
I
mechanism in
I
which we
heard
socially
I
interact.
heard a staggering I'll make a couple points. I heard a staggering number today. Um, uh, Gentleman that wrote the Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was telling you about the video I watched from him earlier,
Mm.
and I actually watched it last night. And you know what he said? And I didn't even realize this. He said in the entirety of World War II, the U.S. printed something like $50 billion. Right now, they're printing 125 billion a day. That's insane. So there's people right now talking about, the inflation that's gonna happen, and it's gonna hit us too, because we rely on them for trade, and I
They're
mean,
the digital
the
currencies.
global trading, I mean, I buy a lot of equipment in US dollars, right? Because it's the global trading currency.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely going to affect us all, right? Um, but I wanna make another point that, I definitely think I've physically talked to a lot of people in all walks of life. I've talked to my neighbors, I've talked to, frontline ICU workers, I've talked to all kinds of people, and, um, there seems to be a consensus that there's some confusion, right? Like, there's a lot of confused people out there because, like I said before, there's misinformation, and and some of it's intentional, right? Some of it's by design. And so, I think that that's really what bothers me the most is that there's a serious lack of transparency with what the real numbers are because of things like not only what you said, but I mean I've had two friends that unfortunately had to go to the hospital in the last 24 hours, and I saw their Facebook posts, and I physically took screenshots of them because I saw empty waiting rooms,
Yep.
right?
And it's so my
Completely
wife's
empty.
first to hospital.
And I
Like it's not busy. The hospital's not busy at all.
But yet then I'm seeing CTV London put out a report about building a thing for 1,000 hospital beds, right?
It's ridiculous.
So
It's
I get
ridiculous.
like, don't get me wrong, I am all about being prepared, but why weren't we prepared with the masks, guys? We've had weeks to get that together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They only just stopped 3M from shipping them here like a day ago.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think there's anyway to sort of to make your point and to kind of move on to something a little more positive here. I think that we've learned a lot throughout all of this. Um, I think that everybody is we're gonna have another look at political correctness. I think we're all gonna have to make sure that we remain empathetic after all of this, and we remain positive. And I was telling you these things earlier. These are the pillars of be a better human. Is we need to maintain empathy. We need to continue to build community. We need to continue to love each other. And I said this in the first and second episodes, and I'll say it again. Everybody's opinion is valid. Period. It just is because you know what? It's valid to them, right?
Yeah.
Like, so at the end of the day, a lot of the things we've said on here, I'm sure there's going to be people that are, they're like, oh, I don't agree with that, or wow, it's amazing. That's the point. The point is there needs to be conversation. There needs to then be action, right? So don't just listen and you know, you gotta immobilize and take
Mhm.
action and do research and understand what is going on. What's the truth? Don't just watch the television, major media, who and think that that's the end of it. That's not the end of it. There's reporters being fired from CNBC right now because they took videos of those empty hospitals in New York.
Yep.
So, we need to be very conscious of what the truth is right now because, there's various levels of truth right now. And the one that's important to, again, it goes back to my thing about lifestyle. The thing that's important, I think, to everyone is what matters to most to you. What matters most to me is I want to live. I want to be healthy. I want to live in a free society. I want to raise my daughter in a world where there's love and community and safety. And right now, all those things seem very jeopardized, right? And they seem very confusing. So I think we as a global race, we need to start asking why. Why don't the numbers make sense? Why are there no masks? Why are we being dictated to in certain aspects? Why why are doctors being banned from using high dose vitamin C? And yet my grandmother's been taking it since I was born. I thought she was crazy for how many vitamins she used to take, but she wasn't. And, you know, so I think there's a lot to be learned. And I appreciate you, speaking some of these truths. I know that sometimes it's not easy to speak truths, and for some people, it's not easy to hear them either. But that's why, right off the top of every show, I say this is going to be real and raw, and take from it what you will. And um, so, Luke, do we have any questions or comments or anything that we need to field at this point?
Earlier we had a question about vitamin C, and let me just scroll up and
And for
find
those of
that.
you that I just want to chime in, Luke's
Mhm.
voice is a bit rough tonight, guys. So if you're all wondering kind of why Luke's not chiming in with me here, I just want to the full disclosure that his voice is a little bit rough tonight, and so I agreed to kind of spearhead it here. But sorry. So vitamin C,
Thank you,
yeah.
sir. Yeah, Tamatha Lee Martin says, I read an article today that said to take a limited amount of vitamin C.
Hmm.
Can someone take too much vitamin C, and how much is too much? And I guess, Tamitha, if you're still here, I'd be curious to see where you actually read that article, what the source of that article is.
Yeah, the source of everything you're reading is very, very important. But yeah, Justin, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure. So my understanding with vitamin C, it depends on the source of vitamin C. So something like parsley is very high in vitamin C. Vitamin C basically helps the inside of your cells function. Vitamin E is the outside of your cells. That middle layer is the fatty acids in your cells. So vitamin C is very, very good for processing all the junk that happens with inside of our cells and helping them just function more optimally. Gets us more energy from our cells. Now, with something like vitamin C, the way that I would recommend using it is you can take a regular dose of vitamin C regularly. If you're taking your body can only process so much vitamin C in a particular period of time. So if you take 5,000 IU of vitamin C at 11 o'clock, your body is only going to use, I'm making these numbers up, don't quote me on this, but 2,000 IU of vitamin
Oh,
C.
it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah, so what the better way to approach it in terms of vitamin C supplementation is you would basically take vitamin C at 9 a.m., at 11 a.m., at 1 p.m., at 1:30 p.m. if you feel like you're getting sick. And this is going to help your cells process the toxicity. If you feel like you're getting a virus, your body is going to process the toxicity that much more effectively. It's going to manage it, and the cells are going to just do their job more effectively. In terms of forms of vitamin C, I'm a big fan of grapeseed extract. It's a very useful form of vitamin C because it kind of helps limit that release of vitamin C within your body. It takes a little bit longer to break down, and it's kind of a delayed response with the vitamin C. So that would be my answer. Can you take too much of it? No, you cannot take too much of it. Um, is vitamin C a great thing to take? Yeah. Is it the thing to focus on solely? Not necessarily. Vitamin C is awesome, but
It is
the
awesome.
IV
I
the
watch it
IV vitamin
often.
C they're doing is basically like dumping vitamin C into people's cells so that they can fight this virus off more effectively because
Mhm.
it's a virus that's in their cells.
Yeah, exactly. And I- I've watched a couple of documentaries and I've talked to a lot of enlighten people and smart people about vitamin C and other supplements, but specifically vitamin C. And I saw a couple of docs. There's actually a couple of documentaries worth checking out on Eastern medicine on Netflix. I don't know if they're still on there, but they were a few months back, and um, talks about what some people in other countries have done with high dose vitamin C and other things like it, um, for healing and for natural health. And from what I've been told, yeah, absolutely. Like, there, if you take too much of it at one time, um, whatever you don't require, you'll just pass it. And then, so if you take it, I'll take one in the morning or two in the morning, let's say, and then, I'll take a couple with me to work, right? And then, as throughout my day, I'll take one. Um, and I think that that's a better thing than taking, two or three or four at breakfast, and then two or three or four at lunch, and then two or three or four at dinner, like with your meal. A lot of people do it with their meals, right? And ironically, in some cases, you're getting vitamin C with your meal, right? Or at least you should be if your body's, metabolizing it from some of the foods. But it's still good to supplement vitamin C at meals. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying that um, it's good to have a little bit throughout the day as well, and just space it out, because you can overdo it at one point, but overdoing it just means you're going to pass it. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll add, if you're doing some vitamin C in terms of ascorbic acid, if you start doing more than like 3, 4, 5,000 IU's at one time, you're probably gonna get the runs a little bit. So you can sort of take too much in terms of that. You can get some loose stool going on.
Okay.
It's not dangerous. It's just literally gonna pass it. And something that I've been doing and I find really, really effective is to actually just sip on a little. I have some liquid liposomal vitamin C. So it's vitamin C that's based in a fat, and it just helps be much more bioavailable. So I find that if I just sip on that throughout the day, I don't have any upset tummy. I don't have anything weird happening, but I can get quite a lot of it into my system without any adverse effects. So liposomal, it's quite a bit more efficient and bioavailable than the actual ascorbic acid. So that's one facet I would add to the conversation.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions for us, or for Justin, please fire away. And it doesn't have to be necessarily anything that we've talked about, but it can be. Um, Justin, I want to, while we're on the topic of supplements, I really like what you were talking about fish oils. What kind of fish oil would you recommend people look at? You were saying, like, look at a higher end fish oil, but like there's different types of fish oils out there, and I know, like, I remember back when I was looking at fish oils, and I would go to, like, I would go to a store and I would just buy something that said fish oils, right? Because I didn't know. And we have this thing called the internet now, and you can get on there, and there's all kinds of information out there, but you can also get lost. So, and I know it's kind of different for everyone, but if you had a go-to fish oil, what would it be?
Um, so I would say the thing to look for is purity when it comes to fish oil. The issues that you run into fish oil from a manufacturing standpoint is when fish oils are produced in too large of a batch. So if fish oils are produced in a large batch, you can produce more fish oils quicker, but the oil goes rancid. So it's about managing the efficiency of the oil, as well as the size of the fish that are included in that fish oil. So Kirkland Costco fish oils um, may be rancid because they're being pumped out at such a large pace of manufacturing. You're going to pay a little bit more for a higher quality fish oil. The other thing to look for is supplements are in a food grade category. So the spinach that you buy being food grade doesn't need to include the bugs that are may or may not be on that spinach, because it's not a substantial part of the spinach. It's not more than 20% of what's in that product. So same thing as with supplements. You don't necessarily need to report the mercury that may exist in that fish oil because it's not 20% of the product. So when you're paying for when you look into brands and this type of thing, pick a brand that is a reputable company that produces a higher quality fish oil, which is of higher purity and isn't necessarily produced at a substantial scale. And those would be the things, like make sure you're choosing companies and look into those companies, look into how their manufacturing processes, look into what standard in which they're carrying. So certain supplement companies follow pharmaceutical grade standard, which is basically everything that's in that bottle is going to be on that label, compared to a food grade standard, which is basically here's your fish oil, here's the fish oils that are in it, and that's all you're going to see on the label.
Hmm.
Now, when I say this, and especially being when I talk about supplements being a luxury, if you can only afford Costco fish oils, that might still be of benefit to you. So don't necessarily throw those things out of the wayside. Figure out what's going to be most strategic to you with your current economic position and how much you want to invest in your supplements. Um, but I would lean towards a higher quality fish oil compared to uh, a larger brand such as Kirkland.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think you need to like always just feel it out. Like if you like my parents, I know they take the Kirkland brand stuff and they've noticed really positive effects.
Yeah.
So for me to go in and kind of rain on their parade, I'm not really interested in doing that. Even though I know that there's better options out there, it's working for them. That's something that they are comfortable with. It's something they can afford, and it sure beats going and spending a ton of money on something that's going to sit in your fridge and never get used. So yeah, I fully back that up.
And that's why I say it's the 10-year journey, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
Yeah.
if you take Kirkland fish oils for 3 years and you feel great, and then you start to take a better quality fish oil and you feel better, that's a phenomenal first start. That's a phenomenal first 3 years. So
Absolutely. And I read somewhere it takes 60 days, to create habit, right? So
mhm.
the person that's looking for 6 weeks, oh, that ain't real. you know, I've in my keto journey and my lifestyle change here, I've noticed that people they come to me at a certain point, and whether they're at 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and they're like, I hit a plateau, and I've always, end up figuring out that a lot of them, it's a lot of little things, right? So that's exactly, you're exactly right. When it's all about time and taking those next steps and research and figuring out how to continue to grind it out and make it better and better and better and better. And it's going to be completely different for everyone. It's like, some people, you're right, some people may not have any effects at all from a lower quality fish oil, but then, Luke's parents do. So it, it again, it's lifestyle related. It's everyone's just different. So you gotta figure out what's best for you, and that takes time, and it takes that time investment, which goes right back to what you said about us investing in ourselves, right? Um,
Yeah, and all your cells, most of your cells in your body change within 7 years. So
yeah,
like, and if you look at it from a cellular standpoint, and to what degree can you influence your cells and how do cells work, and even when you talk about how the heart works, like there's a far more depth of complexity that we could get into of the cardiovascular system beyond just make your heart work hard and then try to calm your heart down. Like, you got to listen to your heart. Your heart is bigger than your physical body. It emits an electromagnetic field which can grow when you feel a sense of ecstasy, like when you feel a sense of joy and love. And these are all things in empathy, like that you talk about, like our heart grows. We may be physically far from each other, but we have the ability to touch each other with our hearts right now. And that's like the whole, like, who we are and who our place is in the world. Like, that's the most substantial thing that I hope erupts out of this, which I don't necessarily think will politically. I think that what I hope will erupt out of is we will gain our power back. We will gain our true sovereignty and our true freedom, which is the ability to do what we want to do when we want to do it in the sense of things, as my child says. My 4-year-old, he wants to do what he wants to do and he wants to do it because he wants his own power. He wants that strength within himself, and
I
that's what I hope will emerge from this.
I can't even imagine how my daughter is gonna grow up with this insane amount of access to information is gonna be wild. Like, I mean, I remember, chatting with someone was going in my parents' basement and going on ICQ. Remember that, Luke, we were talking
Yep.
um, if my brother's watching, he's gonna laugh his butt off. But that's it's, we have, your examples earlier of, of where we've come from in terms
Yeah,
of,
100
you know,
years.
and how quickly it's going now. Luke, you talk about the exponential curve, right?
Mhm.
We were
Yep.
talking about that at one point. I think we're looking at it, man. Like we're there, and it's only going to continue to move faster. So, you know, take a second right now while you have it. That's the cool part about right now is we have time, right?
Mhm.
Like I hear some people, I talk to some people and they're like, I don't have no time. I'm busier now than I was before. My wife's got me building a deck or whatever, so I mean, but take some time. Take some time right now to focus on yourself, focus on your family, focus on your health, focus on what makes you happy. Figure out who you are, figure out what makes you happy because like this is making me happy. I love the fact that we can keep doing this, Luke, and we can keep
Mhm.
thank you, Justin, for coming on, um, sharing your time, sharing your knowledge. Um, I think that this is what we have to do, people. We have to take the time to focus on what's important. Focus on the truth. Don't be confused. Ask why. Get the real answers. That's what this is going to come down to. Is that we this is this I've heard a million people talk about the fact that this is an awakening, and it really is. It really is. We've been asleep for a while, in a sense, and I think that this is very important time, and we all need to not let this time go. I in my own work life I go to these sales conferences sometimes, and they tell you I remember there's one in Toronto called the Archangel Summit, and I remember them specifically saying, "You're gonna leave here today, and by the time you wake up tomorrow, you're gonna have forgotten more than half the things you learned," right? And it's true, it's true. They're like, "You're gonna go back to doing things the way you did them. So make sure that you decide right now while you're here, one or two things that you're going to take away from this thing that you're going to implement in your life because otherwise you're going to go right back to what you were doing." And I thought about that today, when we had a Zoom meeting with my online team, and I'm sure many people right now are having Zoom meetings or having meetings with their teams, and they're like, "Okay, what are we going to do?" And I think some real out of the box thinking needs to happen right now because, that's the cool part about what's going on right now is you have a time to reinvent yourself right now. You can completely change. This is the pause button has essentially been pressed and you can reinvent yourself in many ways, spiritually, mentally, physically, health, family, you know, even just talking to your neighbors, right? Like I think I said it in one of the earlier episodes. Like my neighbor, the young neighbor next door, didn't even know I owned a music store. I've been living here for 2 years. He cuts my grass once in a while when I'm not around. He didn't even know what I did. And so I think that really blew me away. It made me realize that wow, you know, I could be a lot better neighbor. I could be a lot better human myself. So that's, me and Luke aren't just doing this, you know, we've been enlightened and we're on a journey of enlightenment. And we really want everyone to come along with us because we feel that this is the future is that, we're all waking up now and we're all going, okay, what's going on? How do we make this right? How do we become better? Because we're an incredible life force, people. You cut yourself, the cut heals. Think about it. Right? That's incredible to me. When I actually started thinking about it, I went, wow, we take so many of those things for granted. right? Um, we set up Luke and me, we set up big shows and stuff, and we hurt ourselves all the time, right? You ever do that, Luke?
Hmm.
You ram your leg into a road case latch,
Yep.
and you get this big gash, and you hammer through it. You got that adrenaline going, and you're trying to set up a show. Show must go on, and you don't think about it. And then the next day, you're getting up and you're getting ready, and your wife's like, "What'd you do to your leg?" It's like, "Oh, I don't know. I must have hit
Yeah.
it." You don't even think about it, right? And then, and it just heals. It goes away, and you don't even think about it. And I think we need to start thinking about it. Because if we did, everything you've said tonight, Justin, will play, right? A lot of it will play because
That's
you
the main thing.
can influence your cells and you can make significant changes to your body and your immune system and your mindset and how you live and how it affects your family and your children and everyone around you.
Mm.
Just having, feeling better and being more positive as a result and having more energy will change your life. It's changed my life. I know, Luke, it's changed your life, and Justin, I'm certain it's probably changed yours too. So
Substantially.
yeah. So you know
Mhm.
what? If there is absolutely, I'm putting this out there. I put a challenge out there every episode. I challenge everybody out there to take one step at a time in trying to feel that way. Just one step at a time. One thing. And if it means going out and getting some fish oils, or you know what? I'm going to start walking with my arms. I wasn't doing it. That's my takeaway tonight.
People walk like this, right? They were walking
Yeah.
on their phones.
Yeah, I'm gonna start walking with my arms. I just thought people did that and it looked crazy. I didn't actually. My wife's gonna kill me. She's gonna be like, "Yeah, what do you mean you didn't know that?" Um,
Something I say to my kids is head up, heart first. Like we leave this first part of our life of school with our head literally going through life first. And I think one of the most substantial things is we can connect to something higher than ourselves and let it show in our hearts. And you can tell the difference between someone who's homeless and walks and's hunched over and doesn't really swing their arms versus somebody who stands upright, shines their heart forward, and swings as if they have purpose, swings as if they have somewhere they need to go, even if you're just walking around the block. Because when you change those patterns within your own physiology, the patterns change. I have to say this just based off of what you've been saying, but like the purpose behind the brain body alignment system for me is to create a world that's based off the principles of enlightenment, truth, and freedom. And I believe that that is what will emerge through all of this chaos. Is we get to see truths and we get to create a world of freedom and we get to create a world of enlightenment, and enlightenment intellectually from what we understand about the world, and also intellectually from an Eastern philosophical perspective. And that is a force that is driving up through us, um, through our through our midline, in our bellies, like literally the sense of power and us taking the power back and not giving control out to the world around us, not giving our control to our politicians. And I think that's the most beautiful narrative, is that we are actually the ones individually who are managing this, all that we're facing right now and all that we're dealing with. And when we take that power and we put it into our own lives and into our own bodies and into our families and our homes and whatever it is, we manifest beautiful things.
Absolutely, man. Amen, brother. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I mean,
Pleasure.
this is this is just the beginning, folks. Justin, I'd love for you to come on again sometime. I know you've got a wealth of knowledge there, and I'd love for you to come on and touch on some more things on a future episode if you would.
Cool.
And
I'd love to. It'd be a
Luke,
pleasure.
Do we have any more comments that we need to get to here?
Well, your mom, Annette, just said, Brian, you're an amazing, incredible person. You calm me. Thank you for that. I also feel Justin's calm as well. And uh, what else do we have? Um, just trying to go back through. I
I think
had a good
everybody's still
comment
trying to
from.
process everything that you said there, Justin. It's a lot to
I
process, but
I have very deep thoughts, and I'm currently working very hard to make them not so deep. Well, not make them not so deep, but try to articulate them in a not so deep way.
if
Um,
and if anybody wants to go a little little deeper, is there somewhere they can reach out to you?
Yeah,
Um,
you can reach out to me on social media is the best way. If people want to do an introductory session, they can just let me know that they saw this, and I can book them in. Basically, what we do is we do a figure out where you are, figure out where you want to go, regardless of what your goals are, personally or professionally, and we start to paint that story, and then I tell you a story about yourself. We use some hypnotic techniques so that you can tap into your own physiology, and then I give you an overview of exactly what I do and how I work with people. So if people want to go through that process, I'm more than happy to take people through that journey.
Amazing. That's incredible. Well, thank you so much once again for coming on the show. Thanks so much for your time. Luke, thank you so much for doing this again with me. As I say each and
Welcome,
every
sir.
episode, this is an incredible journey that we're on, and I'm very blessed and fortunate to have you and everyone else that's decided to take this journey with us. Um, it's incredible. So thank you again for doing this with me. All right, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. This is episode 3. We will announce episode 4 by tomorrow. We have a couple of really, really great guests coming on later this week that we'll announce by tomorrow. And you definitely want to make sure you tune in for that. And with that said, Luke and I would like to tell you all to love, learn, live, and be a better human. Be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.